Hello. It's another day, another barn trip. I was just listening to Billy Joel, Pressure. Don't know if you're familiar with it. It's one of my family's favorites. You have no scars on your face and you'll have to deal with pressure. All about, young people who haven't really been challenged in life and they have all sorts of knowledge and haven't put any of it to the test yet. And I just thought it was interesting and it's appropriate because what we're dealing with right now is a whole lot of academic knowledge that is kind of falling apart in the real world. And we're watching scapegoating on a level that I didn't know was possible. It's all the fault of the unvaccinated, why we're still in this. They're incubating all these mutations. It's all their fault. Why are they so selfish? Why won't they just jump on board? They're the ones that made this. Okay. Let's back up just a little bit. Caveats. Whatever credentials mean to you, these are mine. These are what I have and what I don't have. I am not a medical doctor. I'm not a virologist. I'm not a vaccinologist. All those things. I have a master's degree in genetics. I got a minor in statistics. And I was specifically trained in school how to read medical literature. So I do feel myself qualified to be able to read a study and see its strengths and weaknesses and apply some of its knowledge in the real world. Does that mean I'm an expert? No. Does it mean I will directly defy someone who tells me, well, here's all of the evidence that I see? We can have a conversation about that, but I am going to come to that table having an equal say. I do not turn over decisions entirely to someone else. If you want to trust experts, that's fine. Just acknowledge that's what you're doing. I don't do that. I read the studies. And I read the studies that those studies cite. So having read some of these studies, and having read, this is not just this year, I have studied the vaccine question. I put more effort into that, way more effort into that than I did into my master's thesis. And with all of that in mind, I just want to talk a little bit about primary, secondary, and tertiary vaccine failure, all of which are happening before our very eyes, right here, right now. All right. So the quick definitions. Primary failure. A person gets vaccinated and they fail to mount an immune response. Just straight up doesn't work. Okay. For an individual. Secondary failure. Initially that person gets a response and then it wanes over time. Months, years, but somewhere down the road, they used to have an immunity, they no longer do. That's secondary failure. Tertiary failure is when the pathogen mutates beyond the reach of the vaccine. Now, all three of those can apply to any vaccine on the market. Here's some specific examples though. Tertiary failure is a big one. We saw it with the childhood vaccine, Haemophilus influenza type B, that's a bacteria, it causes meningitis, and type B was the dominant strain, and so that's what the vaccine targeted. And for a few years it was like, wow, it's all gone. Well, then types A, C, D, E, F, those started to fill in the niche. It's the same thing that happens with antibiotic resistance. There's going to be something that fills in that gap. Nature abhors a vacuum. We don't fully understand what happens when we try to get rid of something that's part of an ecosystem. It doesn't just leave the gap there like a missing tooth. Something comes in its place. We see a similar thing with pertussis vaccine. There are other strains that look a lot like pertussis. They aren't exactly Bordetella pertussis, the bacteria that causes whooping cough, and they fill in that gap. So that is in play right now. Another thing that we're seeing, this particular mRNA vaccine, I'm going to leave the mRNA out of it for a moment. What does the mRNA target? It targets the spike protein, one piece of the virus. This is not like, let's say, MMR. MMR targets the whole measles, the whole mumps, the whole rubella virus. because it's a live attenuated virus. It gives you, like the whole thing, you mount a response to the whole virus. This one is a little bit more like DTaP or Tdap. Those are vaccines against tetanus, diphtheria, and pertussis. Those are bacterial, but the vaccine targets the toxins that the bacteria make, which means you get vaccinated with one of those vaccines. It does not prevent infection. It does not prevent infection. Let me say that again. It does not prevent infection. You can have the bacteria in your body and it will suppress symptoms because it targets the toxin. You can be an asymptomatic carrier for pertussis while being fully vaccinated. We've heard a lot about asymptomatic spread in the last year and a half, haven't we? It's been around for decades. We have known for decades that DTaP and Tdap can cause you to be an asymptomatic carrier. Now, back to the current vaccine. It targets the spike protein, not the whole virus. You have antibodies to the protein, not the whole virus. Now, someone like me, I got the whole virus. I have immune response to the whole thing, not just that one little piece. Why is it far-fetched to think that when you mass deploy a vaccine that targets one piece of an incredibly rampant virus in the midst of a huge outbreak, that maybe the thing will mutate beyond the reach of that virus, of that vaccine? Why is that so far-fetched? Again, I'm not a vaccinologist, I'm not a virologist. I'm telling you what makes sense to me. If you have the vaccine that is so specifically targeted to one piece, well, the thing can mutate that one piece. And then, where are you? Back to square one? Are you worse than square one because it's taken away some of your, it's diverted some of your other immune response in order to make the very specific one? Go look up Geert Vanden Bosch. He is a vaccinologist. I believe he's from the Netherlands. And he was sounding the alarm about this several months ago, saying this might have been an okay vaccine, but you're putting it out there while the pathogen is rampantly circulating. You are going to prompt huge amounts of mutation. You're going to be living with tertiary vaccine failure. He's been sounding this alarm for months. And yet it's the unvaccinated who are the scapegoat for all of this. We're the reason that everything is mutating. When in history has that been the case? What if you looked in the mirror and looked inside your body right now to see maybe you are the incubator for something new? Doesn't mean it's more or less deadly, doesn't mean that it's good or bad, whatever it is. But your antibody from a vaccine is so specifically targeted. Why is it outside the realm of possibility to think that maybe the vaccinated are the ones causing mutations? Why is that such a far-fetched idea? Instead, we have continued pressure, social shame, threats of lost jobs, lost educational opportunities, even the loss of buying your own food if you don't participate in this mass experiment. Because you're the problem. You're the one who is making this continue to mutate. That is not my understanding. It doesn't make sense. Prove to me that primary, secondary, and tertiary vaccine failure are not huge, significant factors in what we are currently seeing in the world. Prove. Otherwise, we're going to continue to say no. We're going to continue to say no because we don't know the long-term ramifications of this. We haven't had a strategy like this ever. We've never had a worldwide deployment on the scale that we're seeing now. And it's scary. And we aren't stopping to count the cost. And it doesn't appear that cases or hospitalizations or deaths or anything are dropping. And when we hear news bites about, oh, it's the pandemic of the unvaccinated, they're the only ones who are getting hospitalized, and we distrust those numbers because we know that testing protocols are different depending on your medical history. You don't count as fully vaccinated unless you're 2 weeks out from your second dose, which is another thing that Geert Vanden Bossche talked about. He said, what if you get that vaccine the next day you're exposed, you're not ready? What if it has lowered your overall immune response because it's mounting this very specific immune response and you get hit with something? All of those are things to take into consideration, but we want it to be this binary, you're either vaccinated or not, and if you're not, then you're the problem. Scapegoating doesn't work. It doesn't get people on board because we have real, honest, true concerns. And I am concerned about everyone, whether you're vaccinated or not. I am concerned about how long this will go on. Are we artificially keeping it going by prompting some more mutations along the way? Again, these are my concerns. These are just my understanding. Again, I'm not a medical doctor, not a vaccinologist, all of those things. Whatever credentials do or don't mean to you, that's where I stand. It is why I am still going to continue to say no. And I am still going to not accept the shame that others want to place on me. That's your shame. You get to carry it all by yourself. I got my own stuff to deal with.